You don't live in Hollow Creek unless you have nowhere else to go. The whole town feels like it's collapsing in slow motion. Factories shut down, storefronts boarded up, and people walking around like ghosts. I was born here, and most days, I wonder if I'll die here too. My name's Jenna Ruiz. I'm 29, a single mom, and I work 2 shifts at the Dollar General just to keep the heat running in our apartment. My son Mateo is 6. Sweet kid. Too quiet though, like he's already carrying more than a child should. That night, February cold cutting through my coat like needles. I just finished my 2nd shift. I was dead on my feet but hadn't eaten all day. Payday wasn't until Friday, and I had maybe $4 to my name. I figured I'd swing by the Wendy's near the highway, grab a value burger and sit for 5 minutes before picking up Mateo from my aunt's place. That Wendy's had seen better days. The neon sign buzzed like it had asthma, and the inside smelled like grease and something sour hiding behind the soda machine. The booths had cracked pleather, and the floor tiles were yellowed with age. Still, it was warm, and for a few minutes it was somewhere to sit that wasn't my car or the flickering back room of the store. I ordered a junior cheeseburger and fries and slid into a booth by the window, shoulders still tight from the day. That's when I saw her. She was sitting alone 2 booths down. Young, early 20s maybe, with pale skin and hollowed cheeks like she hadn't slept in days. A Frosty sat in front of her untouched. Her hands trembled, clutching the cup like it was the last thing tethering her to this world. I remember thinking, she looks like she's been crying for days. Not the loud kind of crying, but the kind that leaves you hollow inside. I tried not to stare. You learn not to in Hollow Creek. People carry all sorts of stories they don't want to tell. But the girl kept catching my eye. Every few seconds, she'd whisper something to herself, barely audible, just quick bursts of words like, "Prayer's gone wrong." I caught one sentence clear as day. I didn't mean to. I didn't know what else to do. The fries in front of me were getting cold. My stomach growled, but I'd lost my appetite. I pulled out my phone and texted Alicia, who was working the overnight shift at the Speedway gas station next door. "There's some girl at Wendy's acting real messed up. Should I call someone?" She replied almost instantly, "Stay away from her. Cops were just here asking about her." My heart kicked a little harder. I looked back at the girl. She hadn't moved, still shaking, still whispering, still holding that Frosty like it might disappear if she blinked. I was about to get up and leave when the chime above the door jingled and 2 cops walked in. Not local Hollow Creek cops either. These guys were from the county. They looked tired and cold, like they'd been out in it for hours. Behind them came a woman in a thick gray coat, holding a folder and wearing that unreadable expression you see on people who deal with hard cases too often. They headed straight for the girl. "Ma'am," one of the officers said softly, "we need to talk about your baby." That sentence cracked the whole night open. The girl, Evelyn I'd later learn, crumbled. She folded in on herself, shaking her head, sobbing so loud it echoed through the restaurant. Everyone turned to look, but nobody moved. Me? I just sat there frozen, because there's a kind of terror you feel when you realize you're sitting in the same room as someone whose life just came apart, and you didn't even ask if they were okay. After they let her out, gently, no cuffs, just her hunched between the officers like a leaf in a storm, I sat there for a while. I don't even know why. My food had gone cold. The burger felt like rubber in my mouth, and I kept replaying her voice in my head. I didn't mean to. I looked around. The place had gone quiet again, as if nothing had happened. The fryers hummed in the background. A teenager at the counter wiped down trays without even glancing up. The world just kept turning. I threw my food away, my stomach twisting. As I walked outside, snow had started falling. Just a dusting, but enough to remind me how bitter the night had become. I picked up Mateo from my aunt's, who looked more exhausted than I was, and took him home. He was half asleep in the back seat, his little backpack sliding off his shoulder. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evelyn's face. Not her crying, But that blank stare before, when she was whispering, shaking, holding that Frosty like it was the only warmth she had. The news came the next day. A baby, found dead in a dumpster, behind the Hollow Creek Motel. Evelyn Harper, 22. Arrested on charges of neglect and involuntary manslaughter. She'd given birth alone, wrapped the baby in napkins, panicked, left him. People were quick to judge her. Facebook was full of the usual venom. Monster, they said. Should rot in jail. I couldn't bring myself to type anything, because I kept thinking, what if I'd just said something? What if I'd asked if she was okay, but I didn't? I sat there, ate my fries, watched her fall apart in real time and did nothing. And now I couldn't get the smell of that Wendy's out of my head. A week later, the FBI came to my door. That knocked me off balance. They showed me a photo. Evelyn, same pale face, same haunted eyes. Did she speak to you? One of the agents asked. Say anything specific? I wanted to say no. I did say no. I lied. But the truth? I'd heard her whisper. I just hadn't listened. After they left, I locked the door and sat on the floor next to Mateo's room. I listened to his soft breathing through the wall and cried for the first time in days. Not sobbing like Evelyn, but the quiet kind, where the tears slide down your cheeks hot and useless. I kept going to work. I had to. But I stopped going to that Wendy's. Couldn't stand the sight of it. Every time I passed, I'd see that booth, the one where Evelyn sat. I imagined her ghost was still there, cup in hand, whispering things no one wanted to hear. Alicia told me I was overthinking it. She made her choices, she said. You did nothing wrong. But I couldn't shake the guilt, because I remembered how tired Evelyn looked, how cold her hands seemed, how she'd sat there for God knows how long without eating, and how I, another tired woman mother to mother, sat a few feet away and chose silence. 3 weeks later, my car finally gave out. Transmission gone. I didn't have the money to fix it, so I started walking to work. 40 minutes in the cold. Sometimes longer if the wind fought me. Each step felt heavier after that night. I started checking on Mateo constantly. Got up 3-4 times a night just to see if he was breathing. I'd tuck him in tighter, kiss his forehead, whisper promises I wasn't sure I could keep. I couldn't stop thinking about Evelyn's baby, wrapped in Wendy's napkins, left in the dark, alone. Some nights I'd stand at the living room window and stare out at the street, half expecting to see Evelyn walking past, or standing under the flickering streetlight, her arms empty. That's the thing nobody tells you. The scariest part isn't the crime itself. It's how ordinary everything feels around it. A booth, a Frosty, a whisper, and how close you were to it without realizing. I never finished my food that night. I don't think I ever will again. Because now every time I sit to eat, I wonder, what if I had just asked? What if someone had? I was dead tired the night it started. The kind of tired where your body moves on autopilot, but your mind's still back at the office, stuck between patient charts and medical dictations. My name's Althea Santos. I'm 23, and I work nights, transcribing medical records for a US-based hospital. It's soul-draining work, but the graveyard shift pays extra. That differential? It covers my siblings' tuition back in Bulacan. I can't afford to quit, can't afford to slow down. Wendy's near the MRT is my usual stop before catching the 1:30 a.m. Jeep. It's one of the few places open late where the aircon is always too cold and the lights are harsh enough to keep you awake. On that night, rain hammering outside, my shoes soaked from crossing EDSA, I just wanted a burger and 10 minutes to sit in peace. Then I saw him. He was sitting in the far corner booth, the one with the busted blinds. Same faded blue basketball jersey, the number peeling off, gaunt face. That same fake newspaper he always pretended to read. I'd seen him there maybe 3 times before, never thought much of it. But this time his eyes locked on mine like he was waiting. Ang ganda mo talaga, he muttered, louder than he should have. smiling like we were old friends. "What time do you get off work? Maybe I can walk you home?" My stomach flipped. I forced a polite smile, said, "Late pa po ako," and walked straight to the counter. I kept my eyes on the ketchup dispensers, pretending not to notice him watching me. But when I passed his booth again, I saw it. He was staring right at my ID lanyard, lips moving as if he were sounding out the hospital name. That night, I took my burger to go, ate it standing under the dripping eaves of the Wendy's awning, glancing over my shoulder every few seconds. Rain soaked through my tote bag, but I didn't care. I just wanted to disappear into the dark and hope he'd forget I existed. I tried to shake it off. Creeps exist. Every woman I know in Manila has a story. Still, something about him stuck with me. How he didn't seem drunk or high. He seemed focused, intent. For the next few days, I avoided that Wendy's. Ate crackers at my desk. Bought instant noodles from 7-Eleven. But Thursday night I cracked. I was starving and lightheaded, and payday was still 2 days off. So I went back, telling myself I was just being paranoid. It was past midnight and the place was half empty. A couple of call center agents laughed loudly over a shared Frosty. A jeepney driver napped in the corner booth. Normal night, until it wasn't. I stepped inside and saw him. Again. Same booth, same jersey, no food. Just a large Coke and a folder this time. He didn't say anything, didn't even look at me right away. But I felt it. That itch on the back of your neck, when someone's memorizing you. I kept my head down and ordered fries. My hand shook as I tapped my card. He stood up, walked to the condiment station, just behind me. "You look tired," he whispered, almost kindly. "You live far?" I grabbed my bag and bolted out the door, fries forgotten. Outside, I blended into the crowd under the MRT stairs, praying he wouldn't follow. I waited until a full trainload of passengers emptied out and walked with them, pretending I was part of a group. At work, I couldn't focus. My fingers kept typing the wrong codes. My supervisor, Ms. Velasco, told me to drink coffee or go home if I was just going to stare at the screen. But I couldn't tell her what was wrong. What would I say? A man watched me eat fries and now I can't sleep. That night, when I passed Wendy's on my way home, he was still there, still in that same booth, still watching. I started changing my routine, different entrance into the MRT, different Jeep routes. I even walked an extra block to avoid passing Wendy's. But no matter what I did, he adjusted. He kept showing up. One morning I saw him by the hospital gates, just outside security. He didn't come in, just stood by a vendor, pretending to buy Tahoe. I thought maybe I was imagining it, but then I saw the folder in his hand. The same, one from Wendy's. He waved, like we were friends. I panicked. I ducked into the building and asked the guard to walk me to the elevator. "May nanghaharas po sa labas," I said. He nodded like he'd heard it before. Then Saturday came. I took a grab home after a double shift, eyes half closed in the back seat. The rain had let up, but the city still shimmered, streets slick and shining under the yellow streetlights. I thought I was safe. But when we turned onto the service road behind Wendy's, he was there, standing right at the corner. When my taxi slowed at the red light, he stepped off the curb and slammed both palms on the hood. I screamed. The driver cursed and hit the gas, tires screeching as we bolted down the road. We filed a report at the barangay hall the next day. I was still shaking when the tanod opened his bag. Inside, a long kitchen knife and pages, literal pages of my schedule. My shifts, the days I worked late, the time I usually showed up at Wendy's. My name was on every line. They took him in, said he'd be evaluated. But we all knew how these things went. There was no restraining order, just a warning. He was out before the weekend ended. After that, I couldn't go back to normal. Not really. I stopped taking public transport. Grab rides cost me half my paycheck, but I couldn't shake the fear. Every time I stepped into a Jeep, I imagined him slipping in behind me. I started flinching at anyone who wore a jersey. At work, I was quieter. jumpier. I asked Ms. Velasco if I could switch to a day shift, but she just frowned and said, "Night differential helps your family, diba?" I didn't push it. I couldn't afford to lose hours, but the insomnia got worse. I kept seeing him in my dreams, sitting in that corner booth, smiling as he wrote my name over and over. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding like I'd just run from something. One night, out of sheer exhaustion, I went back to Wendy's. Not to eat, just to see. The blinds on his usual booth had been fixed. New paint on the walls. The manager, maybe recognizing me, gave a small nod and said they'd banned him. That guy? Yeah, we told him not to come back. But you know, the street's public. I nodded, thanked him, and left without ordering. Alicia, one of the call center girls I'd sometimes see there, later told me he still came by. Just didn't go inside anymore. He just waits near the sidewalk, she said, shrugging. Creepy, no? You should carry pepper spray. As if spray could stop what he'd already done to my sense of safety. I used to think Wendy's was a refuge, a cold, noisy, too bright place where you could just exist between shifts, where no one cared who you were, as long as you paid for your food and didn't hog the table too long. For working girls like me, it was the closest thing to neutral ground in this city. But now I know better. Now I see how routines, my routines, can be weaponized. How something as simple as a burger stop becomes a hunting ground. He didn't chase me with the knife. He didn't grab me on the street. No. He sat and waited and learned until I was too tired, too broke, and too scared to fight back. My younger sister asked why I never take them to Wendy's anymore. I didn't know what to say. How do you tell a 15-year-old that being a woman means planning your whole life around who might be watching? I still work nights, still ride with Grab when I can. And every so often I pass by that same Wendy's. I don't go in, just glance at the corner booth. It's empty now. But sometimes I imagine him there, smiling, waiting, and I wonder how many other girls he watched, how many routines he memorized, and if they ever saw him coming before it was too late. Long before I ever saw the Goggle Man, life already felt like a balancing act I was always losing. I was 17, a senior at a science high school in Quezon City, and every day was a grind. My mom worked double shifts at a private hospital, nurse by day, superhero by necessity. That left me in charge of my little brother Martin. We lived in a cramped second-floor apartment in Project 4, where the walls were thin and the heat had no mercy. Our only luxury was fast Wi-Fi, a gift from my Tito Benji who lived downstairs and paid half the bill. It was the start of April, technically still school season, but close enough to summer for students to start slacking off. I didn't have that privilege. I was barely holding on to my grades while juggling chores, babysitting, and applying for scholarships. So when my biology teacher dropped a group project due in 2 days, I wanted to scream. That's how I ended up at Wendy's on a humid Tuesday night, squished into a booth with 3 classmates, Anna, Paolo, and Jai. We were reviewing slides and sharing 1 large fries and a bottomless iced tea we kept refilling like we owned the machine. Wendy's was packed with other students and call center agents killing time between shifts. The air smelled like fried chicken and stress. I first noticed him when I went to refill our iced tea. He was outside, standing by the bike racks, motionless, dressed head to toe in black, wearing dark-tinted swimming goggles. At first I thought he was just a cyclist on break, but then I realized he wasn't holding a drink, not even a phone. He was just watching us, watching me. I froze at the drink machine. The fluorescent lights inside reflected off his goggles, but I felt him staring right through the glass. When I sat back down, I leaned in close to Anna. "May nakita ba kayong lalaking nakagoggles sa labas?" I whispered. She didn't even look up. What? No. Focus, Mika. We still have to review cell respiration. I tried, but I couldn't stop glancing back at the window. We wrapped up around 11 p.m. Anna's brother had just texted that their driver was waiting, and Paolo lived walking distance. That left Jai and me heading toward the jeepney stand on Aurora Boulevard. I looked back at Wendy's before we left. The goggle man hadn't moved. He's still there, I muttered. Who? Jai asked, distracted by a TikTok video. That guy in goggles. He's just standing there. Jai shrugged. Maybe he's waiting for someone. We boarded a rusty, overpacked jeepney. I thought I'd feel safer once we were on the road, but as we turned onto the main road, I spotted him again. He was biking behind us slowly, matching our speed. My heart sank. Jai got off 3 stops before me, waving goodnight with his AirPods still in. I tried to pretend I didn't feel the panic crawling up my spine. I gripped my tote bag tighter and kept my head down. The jeepney finally turned onto my street, narrow, dim, lined with tired houses and flickering lampposts. And there he was, the goggle man, keeping pace. I could hear the squeak of his pedals behind the roar of the engine. Got off right outside our gate. The moment my feet hit the ground, I turned and saw him swerve into our driveway. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked up. Mika! It was Tito Benji. He'd been having a smoke by the gate. Sino Yan! The man froze for a second. Then just like that, he pedaled away. Fast, like he'd just remembered something urgent. We both watched him disappear down the street. Inside, I was shaking. Tito locked the gate, muttering curses under his breath. A few minutes later, the barangay tanods patrolling nearby found a bike dumped by the corner store. It was his. A beat-up BMX with duct tape wrapped around the frame and an energy drink bottle tied to it. Inside the basket, a small black notebook. It listed times, school dismissal schedules, all handwritten. The barangay turned the notebook over to the police, but no one came to question me. I guess they figured since nothing happened, no one got hurt. It wasn't a priority. Tito Benji argued with the Tanods for days, but the case didn't go anywhere. The bike stayed locked in the barangay hall for a while. I went with Tito once to look at it again. It was smaller than I remembered. The kind of bike you'd outgrow in high school. The notebook, though, that haunted me. I only saw a few pages, but it was enough. 245, St. Maria HS. 410, Roosevelt Academy. 5:30, Science High. That was my school, my schedule. The list went on, day after day, down to the minute. It was like the goggle man had been watching us for weeks. After that, I couldn't walk home anymore. The sound of a squeaky bike chain made my stomach twist. I started paying P40 each way for a tricycle, which meant skipping lunch some days. My allowance just didn't stretch far enough. At school, things got worse. I was constantly on edge. Every hallway glance felt loaded. I stopped joining group studies or staying after class. My biology grade slipped. Miss Aquino asked me to stay after school to talk, but I made up an excuse. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to sound crazy. Even my friends stopped taking it seriously. Baka tambay lang yun, Paolo joked. Next time, invite Mo McFries. I didn't laugh. None of this was funny to me. The worst part? No one else saw him that night. Just me. My friends dismissed it. My mom was too exhausted to process it. Only Tito Benji believed me. But he worked nights too. I was still alone most evenings. I started to wonder, was I overreacting? Was he even real? Then I'd remember the goggles, the perfect timing, the notebook, and I'd feel it again, that gut-deep certainty. I wasn't imagining any of it. Nights at Wendy's used to feel like escape. It was the only place nearby with aircon and Wi-Fi where I could cram or pretend to be normal. Now it just felt haunted. I avoided it for weeks. Then, one Friday near the end of the school year, I gave in. I had no choice. My physics group insisted on meeting there, and I couldn't afford another missed project. I got there early, 6:30 p.m. The place was packed as usual. I picked a seat by the corner, away from the windows. The staff barely glanced at me, familiar faces, but distant. Group trickled in slowly. We worked, laughed a little, but I kept checking the glass doors. Every time someone entered, my body tensed. Around 8:45, I excused myself to the restroom. On my way back, I passed a table with a family, 2 kids, a young mom, and a man in a dark hoodie. His back was turned, but I swear I saw goggles pushed up on his head. I froze, tray in hand. When I blinked, the goggles were gone. Just a man eating with his family. I felt stupid. My brain was tricking me. Still, I left early. Told my group I had a headache. I couldn't stop seeing those goggles in the corners of my eyes. Even shadows felt like warnings now. I'd lie awake at night replaying it. What if I hadn't looked back? What if I'd entered the house just seconds slower? No one understood why I was so shaken. Not really. But I did. Because no one warns you that the scariest part of being a girl in the city isn't loud threats. It's the quiet watchers, the ones who don't speak, who follow, who wait, the ones who smile at security guards and blend into the crowd. Predators don't come with warnings, and they don't vanish just because you stop looking. It's been 6 months. The bike's gone. The notebook's still under investigation. Whatever that means, my grades recovered, barely. I got a scholarship to college. My mom cried when we got the acceptance letter. Sometimes I walk home again. Not every night. Not with earphones in. I don't stay late, and I always glance back. Always. I never saw the goggle man again. But that doesn't mean he isn't out there. Someone else saw a man in goggles outside a 7-Eleven a few barangays away. Could have been him, or just another weirdo. Hard to tell these days. That's what stays with me the most. How easy it is for people like him to disappear, to be written off as strange but harmless. How quickly fear is turned into a joke. But I know what I saw, and I trust my gut now more than ever. I learned that lesson the hard way. Not every danger roars. Some just wait, watch, follow. And when you're a girl walking home after dark, even from a Wendy's, you learn to see them, not just with your eyes, but with something deeper, something that refuses to unlearn the fear. Because in this city, danger doesn't knock, it pedals slowly behind you wearing goggles and a smile. My name is Dante Mendoza, but everyone calls me Dan. At 21, I juggled 2 jobs to support my younger siblings after our parents died in a jeepney accident. From 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., I work as a janitor at the local public high school. Then from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m., I serve as a crew member at Wendy's in Tondo, Manila. The commute between jobs is grueling, and I catch sleep in 4-hour shifts on the UV Express ride home. The Wendy's where I work is a 24-hour joint nestled in a struggling commercial district. It's adjacent to a pawn shop and a 24/7 laundromat. The fluorescent lights flicker incessantly, the drink machine leaks syrup, and the bathroom door has been out of order for as long as I can remember. The security camera's LED blinks, but it's been dead for months. Despite the conditions, this job provides the only free meal I get daily. It's also my lifeline to keep my siblings in school, as their enrollment requires proof of my employment. The job market treats service workers like disposable gloves, and I can't afford to be unemployed. It started with a customer we dubbed Sir Gerald. He was a businessman who always ordered 4 Frosties for his meetings at 1 a.m. He'd leave, fake P1000 bills as tips, each bearing his phone number. His comments about how my uniform fits so well made my skin crawl. One night, I found a selfie of myself taped inside the napkin dispenser. Later, I noticed my work schedule circled on the staff bulletin board. The final straw was discovering a used Frosty cup left precisely at my bus stop. It was clear that Gerald was stalking me. I reported the incidents to my manager, but he dismissed my concerns, saying Gerald was a valued customer. The police were of little help, suggesting I was overreacting. I felt isolated and vulnerable, with no one taking my fears seriously. Closing alone one night, I saw Gerald's black Fortuner idling by the dumpster. The driver's window rolled down just enough to reveal a phone camera pointed at me. Panic surged through me. As I ran, my plastic shoe broke, a P150 expense I couldn't spare. My phone battery died, leaving me unable to call for help. The last jeepney had already departed. Desperate, I hid for hours in the laundromat's broken dryer until sunrise. The experience left me shaken, but I had no choice but to return to work the next day. Quitting wasn't an option. My family's survival depended on my income. During inventory one night, a shabu addict crashed through the drive-thru window with a traffic cone. He began frying his shirt in the vat, screaming about Wendy herself possessing him. The police arrived and found 5 stolen wallets in his socks, a knife taped under dining booth number 3, and photos of all female staff members in his bag. The manager deducted P2,000 from our salaries to cover the damages. My health deteriorated. I developed ulcers from the stress and constant exposure to burger smells. My youngest sister dropped out of school to help at a sari-sari store. Gerald continued to visit, now bringing colleagues who leered at me. Can't quit because Wendy's provides the only free meal I get daily. My siblings' school requires proof of my employment, and the job market treats service workers like disposable gloves. The real horror isn't the danger. It's that the Frosty machine will still need cleaning tomorrow, Gerald will still leer, and Manila will still demand my silence. I endure the harassment and fear because I have no choice. In this city, strange behavior is often dismissed as wala lang, and teenage girls and young men like me learn the hard way that gut instincts exist for a reason. Predators hide in plain sight, even in crowded fast food joints. My shift at the department store usually ends at 9 p.m., and by the time I clock out, the last thing I want to do is go home. My mom works the night shift as a janitor at the local hospital, which means I'm left alone most evenings. The Wendy's, at the half-abandoned mall in Novaliches, is my refuge, a place where I can escape for a while. It's not much, but it's quiet, and it's the only place left that's open after 9 p.m. I don't mind the broken air conditioner or the dim lights. The constant hum of the fluorescent bulbs and the stale smell of fries have become as comforting as any familiar space. The play area in the corner, permanently locked after some incident I'm not supposed to talk about, is a sad reminder of how things used to be better here. But the free Wi-Fi is reliable, and that's all I really need. My mom's late again, as usual, and I've got homework to finish before she picks me up. There's a man who's been here every night this week sitting at the same booth by the window. I call him Lolo Ramon. He's old, always orders just water, but somehow ends up sitting here for hours staring at his manila bulletin like he's reading it. He doesn't really seem to care about the paper. He's more interested in watching me from behind it. His eyes linger on my school skirt in a way that makes my skin crawl. I'm used to weirdos by now. This job isn't the best, and the mall is dying. But there's something about him that unsettles me. I've texted my older brother about it every night, and he always says the same thing. Magtago ka sa CR on my way. I don't know why, but I never feel like I can fully relax until he's here, making sure I'm okay. Tonight, just like the last 5 nights, Lolo Ramon is sitting there pretending to read. I text my brother again, "Andito na naman yung Lolo, 5th night na, creepy." His response comes quickly. Magtago ka sa CR. On my way. I don't know why I'm still sitting here. I should have left long ago, but I guess it's just easier to stay, even with him watching me like that. By the time I've finished my homework and sipped my soda, the rain starts coming down hard outside. The monsoon season is in full swing and the parking lot is flooded with puddles. The wind howls against the cracked windows, rattling the loose neon signs hanging above the counter. The place feels even more deserted than usual. Around 10:30 p.m., I hear the sound of tires crunching on the wet pavement outside. It's a silver Toyota Vios parked in the same spot every night. I can't help but notice the dent on the bumper, the same one my mom's car has. I freeze, my heart skipping a beat. That's her car. It looks just like her car. For a second, I'm relieved, thinking she's here early to pick me up. But as the driver's window rolls down, I see the face of the man I've been trying to avoid for days. It's Lolo Ramon. I try to calm my breathing, but the hair on the back of my neck stands up. My hands shake as I quickly glance around the store. The automatic door locks click shut behind me, the sound sharp and final. I feel a shiver crawl up my spine. The store is locked and the manager's nowhere to be found. Lolo Ramon leans out of the window, grinning at me. His smile is strange, almost too wide. "Bakit hindi ka pa umuwi, anak?" he asks in a voice too soft, too knowing. The sight of his greasy hair and bloodshot eyes makes my stomach turn. I try to smile politely, but I know it's forced. I can't just leave. I'm stuck here until my mom gets here. I quickly text my brother again. Mom's car. Silver Toyota, but it's Lolo Ramon. His response comes almost immediately. "Get to the back, wait for me." I nod, trying to appear calm as I back away from the door. I'm about to turn when something heavy drops from Ramon's hand. A metallic sound that echoes in the silence of the parking lot. A knife? Or maybe just his keys? Suddenly, my mom's real tricycle sputters into the lot. My heart leaps, and I'm flooded with relief. But Lolo Ramon is still staring at me, unmoving. My mom's tricycle pulls into the lot just as Lolo Ramon stands up, dropping something metallic from his hand. I can barely see it, but it looks like a knife. Mom spots me through the window and waves. I turn quickly, looking back to see if Ramon is moving. He's not. His smile has vanished, replaced by a look of anger. It's then that I realize how close he is, how much of a danger he might be. "Ano yung hawak mo? Bakit may kutsilyo sa lupa?" Mom screams as she pulls into a parking spot next to the Toyota Vios. Ramon doesn't flinch, but his eyes flicker, briefly, to the knife he dropped. Then, without saying anything, he disappears into the shadows of the parking lot. Mom rushes out of the tricycle, looking terrified. "Anong nangyari?" she asks, coming up to me with wide eyes. I don't know what to say, but I show her the spot where Ramon stood just moments ago. We both stand there in the rain for a long time. The parking lot is empty now, the only sound the pounding of the rain. But the silence is worse than any noise. "Let's go," my mom says. "We're leaving." As we walk back to the tricycle, I can't shake the feeling that Lolo Ramon is still watching us from somewhere in the shadows. My mom doesn't seem to notice, but I can't stop glancing around, looking for him. The next day at school, I can barely keep my eyes open. I didn't sleep much, and my mind keeps replaying the scene in the parking lot. The look on Ramon's face when he saw my mom, the way he just dropped the knife and disappeared. I can't make sense of it. I fall asleep during my math quiz and fail it. It's a blow I can't afford right now. Not with everything going wrong at home. My mom can't even work the night shift anymore. The hospital's been cutting back on hours and she's been forced to quit. Now we can't even pay rent. When I get to Wendy's after school, I try to keep my head down, but the manager pulls me aside. "Mika, you've been distracting customers with your texting," she says, her face tight. "We're cutting your hours." I can't even argue. I know she's right. I've been distracted, but I never thought it would cost me my job. Now, I don't know how I'm going to help my mom pay the bills. Later that night, I go back to Wendy's. It's been a few days since the incident, but everything feels off. Lolo Ramon is banned from the store now, but I still see him in the parking lot sometimes, sitting in his silver Toyota. I try not to look at him. I try to pretend everything is normal, but nothing feels normal anymore. It's a few days after the incident when the real horror settles in. I've been walking home from school with my brother, and I notice that he's carrying a bike chain with him. I look at him, confused. "What's with the chain?" I ask. "Just in case," he says. His tone is calm, but there's a look in his eyes that I don't recognize. At Wendy's that night, I overhear the manager talking about Lolo Ramon. Apparently, he's been spotted near the mall again. The manager is worried, but there's nothing they can do. The CCTV cameras in the mall haven't worked since 2018. The security guard? He's just a homeless guy, paid in fries. I feel the weight of it all pressing down on me. I'm just a part-time worker, a teenager trying to survive. My life is worth so little to everyone else. The truth is, I'm scared. Scared that the system won't protect me. Scared that no one is going to take my safety seriously. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forget the man in the corner booth, or the knife he dropped, or the way my life feels so fragile now. But I know one thing for sure, I'm never going to be the same after tonight. I'm never going to feel safe again. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A cramped studio apartment tucked away in a rundown Quezon City neighborhood, the kind of place most people wouldn't even glance at twice. But after years of enduring my alcoholic father's violence, it was all I could afford. My old room at home had been my personal hell, and after finally escaping to live on my own, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known in years. The place was small, a single bed, a rickety dresser, and a desk that doubled as a place to eat and work. At fee $4,500 a month, it wasn't great, but it was enough. The old woman landlord barely left her room, and the whole building smelled like mildew and gasoline from the vulcanizing shop downstairs. But I didn't care. I finally had privacy. I had just landed a graveyard shift call center job making $18,000 a month, just enough to scrape by. Every night I'd drag myself through the 2 a.m. to 11 a.m. shift, and I'd get home exhausted, ready to crash. I didn't have the energy to cook or eat, so I'd order something quick and mostly fast food before collapsing into bed. On my third night in the apartment, I came home to something strange. A Wendy's paper bag was sitting by my doorstep, the unmistakable logo staring up at me. Inside, I found a Baconator meal with extra fries, my exact usual order. I froze. How had someone known? At first, I thought maybe my new workmates had sent it, but they barely knew me, and I'd never mentioned Wendy's to any of them. Maybe it was the landlord trying to be nice, but the old woman barely ever left her room. Maybe it was a mistake, but my unit number was clearly written on the bag in Sharpie. I didn't know who left it or why, but it felt wrong. Still, I wasn't in a position to waste food, so I ate the meal. It was the first time in days I felt something close to comfort. The deliveries didn't stop. Every night for the next week, the same thing happened. I'd come home to find a Wendy's paper bag waiting for me. Baconator meals, fries, soft drinks, always exactly what I ordered the last time. The delivery was always at the same time, between 1:30 and 2:15 a.m. No delivery rider in sight, no notes, no names, just a paper bag with my food. I started to get uneasy. The first time was weird, but now it was becoming a pattern, and the more I thought about it, the more unnerving it felt. Who would know my order so specifically? It wasn't like I was friends with anyone at work, and the landlord definitely wasn't trying to do me any favors. By the fourth delivery, I couldn't bring myself to leave the food untouched. I hadn't had a proper meal in days, and it was getting harder to justify throwing it away. I ate the fries. It wasn't the worst thing that had happened, but it was still strange. The next delivery was different. The bag felt lighter, almost empty. I opened it and found a few fries at the bottom, a crumpled receipt, and something that made my blood run cold. There, printed on thermal paper, was my company ID photo. That wasn't the only thing. There was also a used Wendy's napkin with lipstick stains, and on the receipt, someone had written, "For Carlo, sweet dreams," in handwriting I didn't recognize. Suddenly, the unease turned into panic. Someone knew me. Someone had been in my apartment. The worst part? I hadn't heard or seen a thing. It didn't take long for me to notice the other signs. The next few deliveries only made things worse. I'd walk into my apartment after work, half dead from exhaustion, and find my laundry moved around. My shirts would be folded differently, the socks paired up in a way that wasn't how I left them. I checked my window one night and realized it didn't fully lock anymore. I never paid attention to that before. I also started noticing small things. My toothbrush glass, the one I kept by the sink, had been used. The faint taste of someone else's toothpaste lingered in my mouth one morning when I brushed my teeth. I couldn't explain it, but I knew something was terribly wrong. The deliveries kept coming, and I kept eating them, unable to resist the call of free food. But each meal made me feel smaller, more vulnerable. I tried to make sense of it all. Who could it be? Why would someone do this? It felt like I was being watched all the time, even when I was at work. My mind couldn't settle on any reasonable explanation. All I knew was that the creeping dread I felt each night after work was becoming unbearable. I bought new locks for my apartment and installed a security camera, but it didn't help. The camera mysteriously failed after only 2 days. The locks, too, felt like a temporary solution. Whoever was watching me had access to my life in ways that terrified me. The final straw came one night when the deliveries stopped after I ate. 1. I didn't know if that was worse or not, but the silence was almost worse than the constant presence of the food at my door. I was left alone with my paranoia, with no answers and no idea who to turn to. One night, after another hellish shift at work, I arrived home to find the streets flooded. The monsoon season had hit hard that week and the water was ankle deep on the pavement. My head was spinning from exhaustion, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different tonight. I noticed a shadow lingering near the Sorry store across from my building. It was almost impossible to make out in the rain, but I could see a figure standing there unmoving. My heart skipped a beat as the sound of a motorcycle revved to life in the distance. The same motorcycle from before, the one without a license plate. I stood frozen in place, watching. As the motorcycle approached, the shadow by the store shifted. Then through the rain I heard something else, a woman's laughter. It echoed down the alley, high-pitched and unsettling, but there was no one there. No woman, no figure. Just the faint, eerie sound of laughter. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. I packed up my things, ignoring the nagging thought that I was overreacting. I left without telling anyone, without a word to the landlord, and without even asking for my deposit back. I just needed out. The next day I found a new place, a little more expensive at $6,500 a month, but at least it felt safer. It was farther away though, and now I had to walk 45 extra minutes to work. Still, it was worth it, but every time I heard a motorcycle, my heart would skip a beat. And every time I passed that same alley, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I tried to move on. I tried to forget about the strange deliveries, the creeping terror that had consumed my every thought. But the truth still haunted me. I couldn't explain it. I called Wendy's once just to ask if there was any record of the deliveries to my address, and they told me there was nothing. No record of any orders, no receipts, no names. It was like those meals had appeared out of thin air. I went to the barangay for help, but they refused to file a report. Without evidence, they said, there was nothing they could do. I didn't have any proof, no clear sign that someone had broken in or was stalking me. It all seemed so vague. The worst part wasn't the stalker. It wasn't the deliveries. It was the chilling realization that my own poverty had made me a target. I was just a guy scraping by in a neighborhood no one cared about. Who else would live in that hellhole? The weight of my circumstances settled on me. My life was disposable, easy to ignore, easy to violate. And as I walked to my new apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been living in a nightmare, one that might never really end. The worst part? I might never know who was behind it all. The first thing you need to understand is that I'm always tired. I don't have the luxury to be anything but. I'm 22, and my life is a cycle of work, sleep, barely, and worry. I've been juggling 2 jobs for almost a year now, 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. I'm a construction helper, lugging steel bars and cement bags for a measly P450 a day. At 5 p.m. I punch in at Wendy's, where I work until 2 a.m. for a heart-wrenching P63 an hour. I've tried to catch a nap on the FX ride between jobs, but it's never enough. When I close my eyes, I just hear the constant hum of the engines, the feeling of sweat sticking to the back of my shirt, and my stomach growling from the fast food leftovers I sometimes steal during breaks. My family needs me. My mom's sick with diabetes and hypertension. I don't have time to deal with things like rest or having a life. I just have to keep going. The trouble started like a usual Friday night at Wendy's in Pasay Rotunda. It's payday, so the place is packed. Drunk customers stumble in, slurring their orders, arguing over who's paying, and demanding extra sauce for their fries. The sound of a karaoke bar blasting pop hits until 3 a.m. doesn't help. It's loud, it's messy, and the air feels like hot grease that sticks to your skin, no matter how much you wipe your face. The broken air conditioner doesn't help either. The fans just push the greasy heat around, making the whole place feel like a sauna. That night, I was stationed at the counter. Manager Joy was on her phone as usual, not caring much about anything beyond what was on her screen. She didn't notice the guy who walked in stumbling like a wounded animal, Sir Anton, as we later called him. Anton wasn't a regular, but his bulk made him unforgettable. He was huge, muscular in a way that looked aggressive rather than athletic. He smelled like cheap cologne and something else, maybe whiskey. He slammed his tray down on the counter like it was a bomb about to explode. Tangina, kulang yung chicken. Nuggets ko, dapat 6-piece, 4 lang to, he screamed. His face was red, eyes bloodshot. I looked at the tray and sure enough, there were 6 nuggets. The guy had eaten 2 of them, and now he was claiming we gave him 4. No receipt, sir? I asked politely, trying to keep things civil. He threw his hands in the air. Nalaglag na, he barked, and without the receipt there was nothing I could do. But there was one thing I knew for sure. He was lying. I glanced over at Manager Joy, who was still on her phone, not even looking up. Basta maalis lang, she muttered, waving her hand dismissively as though this was a minor inconvenience. I couldn't believe she was just letting him get away with it, but I had learned long ago that in Wendy's the priority was always the customer, no matter how unreasonable they were. By 1:30 a.m., most of the drunk crowd had left. The store was quieter, but that didn't mean it was any safer. The last thing I expected was for Anton to come back and cause a scene. But that's exactly what he did. The door was supposed to be locked, but the latch was broken, a problem that had been ignored for months. Anton kicked the door open with such force that it rattled on its hinges, and the glass panes shook like they might shatter. He was screaming now, his words slurring in anger. Mga putang ina nyo, sasabunutan ko kayong lahat. The other workers froze. I heard the clatter of chairs being thrown across the room as Anton started lashing out. My heart raced. I couldn't think straight. I grabbed the closest co-worker, Arlene, and pulled her behind the counter. The freezer door was barely closing properly, but it was the only place to hide. We crouched inside, breathless and shaking, while Anton's fury filled the air outside. The next few minutes felt like hours. The only sounds were Anton's shouts and the sound of things crashing around. I could hear the distinct thud of chairs being thrown and the horrible noise of something heavy being hurled at the walls. My hands were sweating and my head was spinning. I wanted to be anywhere but there. Eventually we heard the sirens. The barangay tanod had arrived, but it took them 25 minutes to show up. In the meantime, Anton had done his damage. When we finally dared to step out of our hiding place, the place looked like a war zone. The Frosty machine was covered in urine. The ketchup packets were missing, and there was a bloody handkerchief left on table 5. The police were useless. They took a report, but something didn't sit right. Anton, it turned out, was a cop's cousin. Funny how that worked, huh? The police report was mysteriously lost, and I was left standing there, not knowing what would happen next. The aftermath was worse. The manager, Joy, didn't bother to deal with anything. She quit the next week, leaving us with no real leadership. No one came to clean up the mess. No one replaced the broken latch on the door. And worst of all, the company's only solution was to deduct Pion 500 from each of our paychecks to cover the damages. I thought it couldn't get worse, but it did. I developed panic attacks whenever I worked the night shift. The constant worry, the noise, the feeling of being trapped. It all wore me down. My mom's medications were delayed because of the salary deductions, and I couldn't afford to pay for them anymore. She didn't understand, and honestly, neither did I. The worst part was realizing how little my safety meant to them. The company didn't care that a customer had attacked us. They didn't even care about fixing the security cameras that hadn't worked since 2019. They just slapped a fake CCTV sticker on the window to make it look like they were trying to protect us. You'd think that the real horror of the night was Anton's rampage, but in reality it wasn't. The real horror was something much deeper, the fact that I couldn't escape this life. The fact that no matter how much I wanted to quit, I couldn't. My mom's condition kept me tied to the job, and the minimum wage kept me trapped. I started carrying a screwdriver in my pocket after that night, just in case. It felt ridiculous, but it was the only way I felt even a little bit safe. Next time Anton might come back with friends, maybe next time things would get worse. I realized that this job wasn't just a dead end. It was a system built to grind people like me into the dirt. I was just another cog in the machine, disposable and replaceable. I wasn't even a person to them, I was just a body to fill a shift. And so I kept showing up every night, exhausted, broken, but unable to leave. The terror wasn't the violent customer. It was the realization that no one cared about me and I couldn't do a thing about it. My name is Trina Robles. I'm 14, but most people say I act older than I am. The truth is, I had to grow up fast. My parents never seemed to get along. Most nights, they're yelling at each other about gambling debts, about how much we owe, or why they can't pay for the rent this month. The apartment is small and hot, even worse during the summer. We live in Mandaluyong, where the sounds of cars, honking horns, and construction never seem to stop. It's suffocating, the heat and the noise. Sometimes, when it gets too bad, when the walls feel like they're closing in, I slip out. I don't care that it's late, I don't care about the curfew, I just need to get away from it all. The only place that gives me peace is the 24-hour Wendy's on Edsa. It's not far, just a 15-minute walk from home. I go there to finish my school projects, using their Wi-Fi. We can't afford data, so it's my only option. That night, though, was different. When I got to Wendy's, it was completely dark. The flickering streetlights and the broken neon sign above the door read only Endy's. The W was gone. It was the kind of place that felt stuck in time. The drive-thru speaker, which usually blared out the menu, was only static now. I thought maybe the brownout was affecting the area, but it didn't make sense. Wendy's never closed, not even during brownouts. I was about to turn back and head home when something caught my eye in the parking lot. It was a life-sized Wendy's girl mascot, standing eerily still by the dumpster. It wasn't unusual for the mascot to be out there, but something about it felt wrong. It didn't move. And its smile, it was stitched way too wide. One of its eyes was missing. I stood frozen, staring at the mascot for a second longer than I should have. It felt like I was staring at something unnatural, like it was waiting for me. The air around me grew even heavier. The brownout made the place even quieter than usual. All I could hear was the static from the drive-thru speaker and my own heartbeat, pounding in my ears. And then it happened. The mascot's head snapped toward me. No human could move that fast. It wasn't possible. I felt my stomach twist with fear, and my instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was paralyzed with terror, caught in the gaze of something that shouldn't have been alive. Before I knew it, the mascot began to glide across the parking lot, moving toward me. Its feet didn't make a sound on the wet concrete, and the air smelled like rotten chicken. It was so foul I could barely breathe. I started backing away slowly, my feet finally finding their strength. I was almost out of the parking lot when I passed the homeless man sitting by the corner of the building. His eyes didn't even look at me. He was pretending not to see, but I could see the terror in his face. Then the security guard stepped outside, looking nervous. His hand was shaking as he fumbled with his keys. He looked at the mascot for a second, then muttered something about needing to pee and bolted for the bathroom. The stray dogs by the corner of the street whimpered and ran off. They could sense something was wrong, too. I didn't dare look back. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, pushing past the gate and back onto Edsa. My heart was pounding, my breath coming in gasps. The sound of plastic rustling from behind me like a bag being dragged along the ground sent chills down my spine. I didn't stop until I was back home, breathless and terrified. The next morning, I barely slept. My eyes kept fluttering open, looking for any sign of that thing. I kept seeing flashes of its grotesque stitched smile and the missing eye. It was a nightmare I couldn't shake off. When I got to Wendy's the next day, I tried to act like everything was fine. I walked up to the counter to grab a snack before heading to school. I knew the staff there, and I figured maybe they could explain what happened last night. But when I asked them about the brownout, they all just looked at me like I was crazy. "Walang brownout dito kahapon," said one of the crew members, shrugging. We didn't lose power. I tried to ask about the mascot. "What about the mascot?" I asked. "The one by the dumpster?" The crew all looked at each other, confused. One of them spoke up. Wala na po yung mascot since 2018. Pati yung costume tapon na matagal na. That made no sense. I'd seen the mascot with my own eyes, right there in the parking lot. But they all insisted it was just a mistake, that I must have imagined it. I started to walk out, feeling like I was losing my mind. When I reached for my school bag, I froze. Something caught my eye. I opened it up, and there, at the bottom of my bag, were 2 red pigtails, strands of synthetic hair. They were the same color as the mascots. I grabbed them in disbelief, my hands shaking. I didn't know what to make of it. Was I imagining things? As the days passed, things only got worse. I tried to go back to normal, but I couldn't stop thinking about what happened. I couldn't focus at school. I kept hearing plastic rustling outside my window at night, like something was moving. Every time I looked outside, I saw nothing but the empty street. I started falling asleep in class, my head on the desk, too scared to go out at night. My grades slipped, and I failed 3 subjects. I couldn't concentrate on anything anymore. I was scared to be alone, scared to be in the dark, scared of what was lurking in the shadows. At home, my parents never noticed. They were too caught up in their own problems. I couldn't tell them what happened. They'd just laugh at me and say I was imagining things. After all, I was just a kid. What did I know? The rumors started circulating around the neighborhood. People talked about the barangay captain's nephew, who had gone missing last year near that very Wendy's. But no one had ever found him. The police never investigated it properly. It was as if everyone just pretended it didn't happen. I started hearing stories from night shift workers at Wendy's. They said they'd seen strange things in the play area after midnight. Shadows, moving where there shouldn't be any, and strange noises coming from the old mascot costume stored in the back. They said it had been missing an eye for years, ever since the last manager disappeared. I don't know what's real anymore. All I know is that something's wrong with that place. Something's wrong with the mascot, and something's wrong with the city. I can't escape it. I wish I could forget. But I can't. I'm still living in the same apartment, still stuck with parents who don't care. The only difference is that now I'm scared of the dark, scared of what's waiting for me outside. In Manila, even your nightmares have to take the jeepney home. And no one's going to protect you. Not your parents, not the cops, no one. I'm just another kid trying to survive in a city that doesn't care.